Welcome to VPG's Virtual Water Cooler Chat Podcast, a platform that features professionals across a variety of industries and promotes growth mindset principles with a central pillar of championing the achievements of women. Our conversations explore a wide spectrum of backgrounds, experiences, and perspectives, creating a vibrant mosaic that enriches our collective understanding and strengthens our commitment to growth and empowerment. Today, we're speaking with Saurabh Gupta, an IP attorney with a background in biological and electrical engineering. In 2010, his Ph.D. thesis on designing and delivering genetic circuits, including CRISPR, to tackle microbial infections, was awarded the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation's Grand Challenges Research Award as one of the 5 most innovative solutions to pressing global health problems that year. Saurabh received his J.D. from George Washington Law and his Ph.D. in biological engineering from MIT. Let's get started.
Good morning, Saurabh. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
Oh, it's Friday. Did I say more?
I know we have all been there. I eagerly wait for my Fridays too, because I find Friday evening and Saturdays are sort of my time of the week where I try not to do too much work and try to spend time with family. So yes, I look forward to that time.
Well, first of all, thank you for being on Virtual Water Cooler Chat. I'm pretty sure that most of the people on Google Virtual has already gotten on. So, of course, I cannot miss you here. So, thank you. Why did you say yes?
You've always been a good friend of mine. You are very honest and vocal about the issues that you care about. And so it is my honor to be here and talk to you and tell you more about my journey. And through you, I'll be able to reach out to people who look up to you, who are in your friend circle, and who I can help.
I haven't always been like this. I used to be a wallflower. So the first question I have is, would you mind sharing the story about your journey, how you got to the state and became a patent attorney at Greenwich?
It's quite a long journey with many twists and turns, and I'll tell you all of them. I grew up, in a family with no lawyers whatsoever in any of my generation, like neither on my parents' side, neither on my wife's parents' side, anyone, right? I don't know a lawyer, and lawyering is not a thing in India where I grew up. So my first 20, 30 years of my life were spent only thinking about science and engineering, which is what I did. I went to IIT in India, which is one of very good colleges in India that are very hard to get into, and I did engineering. And I was doing actually civil engineering when I started doing science and engineering, but then I graduated with computer science and electrical engineering degree. Then I worked for a year in India as a semiconductor design engineer. And I quickly got really, I wouldn't say bored, but I started thinking, well, what next? I'm a very long-term thinking type of person. Everything I do in my life, I always think about what's 5 years ahead, right? I don't do things because I find them enticing to do today, right? I think about what's the use of them 5 years from now. And when I was doing my job as a semiconductor design engineer, I thought, I can't do this 5 years from now. Like I have to think about something else. And I have this thing, as soon as I start getting comfortable at some place, I start to get itchy. I have to do something to get out of my comfort zone. It's kind of like I just don't like comfort at all. So I started thinking about applying to come to US for grad school, and I went to and applied and got into Princeton, went there and did semiconductor device physics, which was completely different than what I was doing earlier. Although it was semiconductor design engineering and principles, but working in a job is very different than going to school and taking courses. And I remember in one of my class, there were 10 students in semiconductor device physics class, and 9 of them were Physics Olympiad awardees, like either the first or the second or the third. And I was the only one who didn't have an award who has never attended Physics Olympiad. And so I felt like, whoa, I'm in a place which is completely out of my league. but I survived. I did well in that class, and that's how it was like every class at Princeton. And so again, I became very comfortable doing semiconductor device engineering and research. And then again, I started feeling that itch that I'm getting too comfortable. If I'm going to do PhD for 6, 7 years, I might as well pick a challenge that is completely out of my league, right? And so I got really interested in applying electrical engineering design principles to genetics and microbiology and mammalian cell biology. And I found a professor at MIT who was very interested in doing that. So then I moved to MIT and I started doing my PhD in biological engineering. The last course on biology that I had taken at that time was probably high school. And I was suddenly thrown into again in a bunch of grad student classes where everybody has taken biology throughout their undergrad, has done research in biology. I mean, it is MIT we are talking about, right? And I took that as a challenge, and I took all the grad courses. I didn't have to, but I just sat through all of them to kind of get acquainted with all the biology, understand what it is. I would sit at the back of the class, and it would be a huge class, but I never really shied away from asking questions. So I would ask questions, and it was funny. One of the professors, he pulled me aside after the class and said, I'm not really sure how to answer your questions. Your questions aren't wrong, but they aren't really right either. And so, can you please not ask those questions while in the class, and maybe we can, set up a time after the class, and because it derails my entire lecture. I don't know how to answer that question because it requires a lot of thinking on my part. And at that time, I was like, huh, that's kind of a strange review to get from a professor at MIT. I mean, aren't they supposed to know all these answers? They've spent this much time teaching all these courses. Anyway, so I told that to my advisor, and my advisor was very proud of me at that time. He was like, well, if you can ask questions that will bowl over an MIT professor, I think you're doing a phenomenal job and you're going in the right direction. So I took that as a compliment. But then again, after my PhD, I became very comfortable and started thinking, well, in my entire life, my progress only happened when I jumped from one place to another and did something that brought me out of my comfort zone. And at that time, I started thinking like, okay, what's my plan here? I'm married now. I just got married before my PhD was finishing, and I can't just live on a salary of $30,000 a year, which is what a grad student salary was. And I had to think about like how do I feed my family, right? And so I started thinking I got to think about a real job here. And so at that time, a patent agent position opened up at Ropes and Gray in Boston, and I the thing that really interested me towards that position was, wow, they're going to send me to school again, and they're going to fund all of that education. So I'll get to go to law school and really not pay a dime for that. And yes, I will have to work a lot. I will have to work and study at the same time, but I will learn so much. And that excitement, that hope of learning so much was just very exciting to me. It was very interesting to me. So I jumped into I became a patent agent at Ropes and Gray. And when I joined Ropes and Gray, I had no idea what it is going to be. I did not even know what a memorandum is. The first time I heard what a memorandum is when I Ropes and Gray and somebody asked me to draft one. So yeah, I mean that's how I was when I actually started. And then I started doing patent prosecution, and then an opportunity opened up in Ropes and Gray's DC office where Steve and Megan were partner and counsel. I think Megan was an associate back then. And PTAB was starting, and they were the first ones to start thinking about filing IPRs and CBMs at that time. And they were looking for someone who can analyze patents, who is very good with technology. And at Ropes and Gray, there was no patent agent at the time who was doing litigation. And so they were not sure if they're going to open up this opportunity, anybody is going to show up. And they asked if anybody's interested, and I raised my hand. Again, as soon as I get to a place, I become comfortable, I start getting that itch. And I got that itch. I moved my family from Boston to DC and started working on PTAB. And then I worked with Steve since then. He then moved to Paul Weiss. I moved to Paul Weiss with him. And that's when I met Nick Groombridge, Eric Stone, and all the folks at Paul Weiss. I went to law school at the same time. I was the first and the last TA at Paul Weiss. I don't think they have TAs anymore. Paul Weiss was very generous. And so I became an associate while working at the same time. Then all these folks, they started Groombridge Wu, and I moved to Groombridge Wu with them. So that's really how it all started and ended.
That is such a long journey.
Yeah, I have been in this field for a long time.
I love the fact that you're not afraid to kind of throw yourself in, especially in a completely different discipline, also a different country. You did share with me that you came from a humbling upbringing in India. Does it even intimidate you to, for example, come to a foreign country, come to the States, and then just kind of have to throw yourself into the intellectual property community where it could be intellectually intimidating?
Yes, it always is and intimidating, right? I think the way I overcome it is there's always a part of me that is scared and unsure of whether or not I'm going to succeed in whatever I do. If I'm going to jump into biology and I'm coming from engineering, there is a part of me that will be like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this, right? But there's also a part of me that is very centered and it operates on its gut feeling. Like I get these gut feeling that what my path is, and I need to follow that path wherever that leads. And I trust that instinct, I trust that gut feeling, and it has always paid off. Now the question is, despite getting all these self-doubt and intimidating feelings, how do I keep going? I keep my focus on the end goal, right? If my end goal is to become an associate, I don't care if the challenges are, oh, I need to go to Ropes and Gray first, become a patent agent for 2 years, then go to law school, because I am very focused on finishing law school. And so every time there is a challenge, my focus on the goal actually keeps propelling me forward. It keeps telling me it's okay. There are, some setbacks, but at the end of the day, think about what you're going to get once you graduate. Right? So that's how it was when I jumped from engineering to biology, because I was thinking, well, think about all the nature papers I'm going to publish because this field is new. And I was excited about that end goal. And that excitement actually said, okay, I'm going to keep pushing. And so when I joined Ropes and Gray after my PhD, I was excited about the prospect of becoming an associate or becoming a lawyer in a big law setting and have a comfortable life. I was excited about that prospect. And so that's why I kept doing it. And then once you keep your focus on, all you have to do is just work hard. And that has never been a problem for me. I can close the door and I can work hard as much as I can, right? I mean, as much as I want. Like I can work for hours and hours and it just doesn't bother me. I actually like it. That's really what just keeps me going. I mean, yes, I get intimidated. I still do, but I sort of keep my focus on the end goal.
Begin with an end in mind.
You begin with an end in mind and trust my instincts, right? I think that the scariest part of doing anything new is when you find people who always doubt you, who don't trust you, who will always look down upon you, who are not happy with your success. They will come off as very friendly, but that they are not happy when you succeed, right? The key is to avoid those people and find the ones who are happy in your success, who are willing to help you, who are good people, and surround yourself with those type of people, because those are the ones who are going to teach you, and the ones who are not happy are just going to drain you out of all your energy.
And you have to protect your energy.
And you have to protect your energy, right? And so where my gut instinct helps me is I am very good in recognizing who are the energy drainers and who are the energy providers, right? There are two types of people in this world. There are some who adds to your energy, and there are some who takes your energy away. You gotta associate yourself with people who add to your energy and dissociate with people who take your energy away.
You see, what is really interesting is that I love the fact when you told me about the professor at MIT that actually put you aside. I don't know how to answer your question. Can you reserve that for later? And I was listening to, I think mostly Adam Grant, that talks about like the education system in the States, or maybe overall education systems, is people are not really taught to think critically. So he has his book, Think Again. And I think that the educational institution, for the most part, they have a set of answers. You take those tests, those are the answers and the questions that you are encouraged to ask. And if you are an outlier, then it becomes not quite acceptable. And I'll give you an example. I used to be super timid. I still have a lot of self-doubt. I did not know how to decipher between fake nice people and real nice people. And I just know that I just have to work. Because that's kind of how I was brought up. My parents was like, don't question people. And when we came to this day, we just work, right? You should be so lucky that you have a job and, just work. So that's kind of how I was mostly handling everything. And when I was in college, English is my second language, and I was super sensitive about my accent. Because sometimes when people want to make you doubt yourself, they would keep asking you to repeat. Like, I'm sorry, I did not understand what you just said.
Right.
For someone who's perfectionist, I think that's really kind of it really does a number to your mindset. So when I was in college, I don't know what came over me. I was an undergraduate, last semester of senior. I decided to go and take a upper level of law and society. And then the syllabus said that this is basically for PhD level, master and PhD level classes, and for a few masochistic undergraduates. I fell into that category. The first time I had to do like a book review, a critical summary, I freaked out in front, because all my peers are people that actually knows how to present themselves. They have done all this. I have not done anything. I just feel like that it was interesting. So I decided to go take the course. The first one I did not do well. And I just went home and really became very harsh on myself. And then I had to figure out ways how to overcome that so that the next book's summary is better. Because otherwise, I just completely froze in front of people. And that was a spectacle. I think I got like an A- out of the class, which is not bad for someone who like froze the first time, right? My professor then, he is a political science professor, but he is also a jury consultant. So he has his own practice. And he actually used the classes to help some of the pre-law students to learn about jury consulting. He helped some people to create interdisciplinary study. So it's basically pre-law, law school, and then political science, psychology, and then help some of the law students and then the poli-sci major to get into that part of jury consulting, study the psychology of jurors. And I really was very intrigued about what he created, but I didn't want to be a lawyer. So I was like, can I create something else using your model? And he was like, yeah, sure. I said, would you mind being one of my thesis advisor? He said, sure. So anyway, I created my own interdisciplinary study and I went to take law school classes and like the legal context of international law, something like that. And without knowing how to do legal research, without knowing how to do like legal writing, until I sort of like get my feet wet, I was not doing well usually the first time because I haven't figured out exactly how to like adapt. But once I adapted, then I usually get like, a B plus or A minus. The professor that always taught me was nothing venture, nothing gain. So I think it's really interesting how that professor pull you aside because he got to know how to answer your question. But the good thing is that I really like the fact that he would not just discourage you from asking questions, but at least ask after class. So he definitely spot your talent. I never really told too many stories about myself. So through like podcasting, I'm remembering so many things. So let me not focus on me and focus back on you. What are two fun facts about you?
I find that question really one of the most difficult questions.
You don't consider yourself fun?
No, it's not that I don't consider myself fun. Every time someone asks me that question, I start thinking, well, I have this internal pressure on me that I need to come up with something that is very unique from someone else, right? If I say, oh, I love hiking, and on my honeymoon, I actually took my wife to hike Mount Washington. That was a funny story too, because we did not time our hike well, and so we started too late. And by the time we started coming down, it was already too dark, and then we lost our way, and so we had to sort of call for help because we had no water, we had no food, we had our phones had died, we were thinking of spending the night somewhere remote part of Mount Washington, not knowing what to do, right? And then on my 10th anniversary, I went back. I went back to Mount Washington to climb up, and my wife did not go because she had a horrible experience. But anyways, so I love hiking. I think that has a lot of parallels with my own journey. Going through hiking is sometimes painful, right? You're hiking and you don't know what you're doing and you're tired and but if you keep the goal in mind that once I reach at the top, the views are beautiful and the endorphins that are going to be released once you finish this are worth it. That's what keeps you going, right? So hiking is that thing. Fun fact number two. I don't know if it is a fun fact or not, but the first time I sat in a plane was when I was coming to US at the age of 25, and the journey was about 16 hours plane ride. And before that, I have never even gone to an airport, so it was very interesting to sit in a plane for 16 hours coming to US for the first time, and yeah, it was surreal. So I don't know if it is a fun fact, but again, that's all I can remember at this time.
Did you come by yourself and just decided that you're just gonna come?
Yes. Actually, my parents didn't even know that I was going to US. Uh,
That's a fun fact.
two, 2 days before I was about to leave, right?
Oh God.
So they were like, "What?" And I'm like, "Yeah, see you later."
It's interesting because considering how Indian culture is probably very family focused, how did you pull that off?
Um, I had a strange family, like my dad was very strict, and I was always a rebel. I never liked to follow rules. And I was telling you the other day,
Yep.
I'm a
And you
lawyer.
are a lawyer.
I
Yep.
am a lawyer, and the thing I hate the most are rules. And so he was not very supportive of me coming to US. He was because he does not like to take risk. And coming to US and leaving a good job, going to a new place, not knowing what to do was a huge risk for him. And so if I had told him, he would never have let me come to US. So I had to sort of keep that secret until it's too late for him to do anything. Otherwise, this whole plan would have failed.
Yeah, we wouldn't be sitting here talking to you, Saurabh. If mom and dad has anything to say in this. So, I was really intrigued when I learned about your thesis, or is it dissertation, PhD dissertation on the genetic implant, and that was awarded 600K from
Yeah.
Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation for your research.
Remember, we were talking about this class that I took, and the professor pulled me aside and said,
Yes.
you ask questions that are not right and not wrong. And the reason why he asked that was because he's a biologist, and biologists are scientists. They don't think of manipulating something, they think of understanding a biological phenomena, right? They don't think like engineers who once they understand a biological phenomena, what is it that I can do or mold it my way to do something that I wanted to do, right? That's what engineers are, right? Engineers don't stand there and understand how cement works. They think of like, oh, cement works it this way, so I want to make a building out of it, right? What do I do? And the reason why I'm telling you this is because that's how this idea sort of originated. Because I am an engineer and I always think of how can I use this to my advantage? How can I use the knowledge that I have to my advantage? And so in that class, he was teaching something about how T cells work and how mammalian cells work, and something about CRISPR. And I was sitting there and thinking, well, how can I use this? And so this idea came to my mind. I went and researched a lot of papers on it. And then at that time, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation were looking for innovative ideas to deal global health. I had this idea, and then I sort of put together a proposal with that idea in mind, how we can use. And the idea was basically you would genetically program probiotic bacteria that you eat as part of your probiotic supplements or as part of yogurt. And those will be genetically modified bacteria that once you eat them, they will sit inside you, they will colonize your gut, and they will sort of act as an immune system, right? They will keep detecting different pathogens that come your way, and once they detect them, very minute quantities of them, they can do something before the pathogens become too big to sort of fail, too big to eradicate, except by taking very harmful antibiotics. And so Gates Foundation really loved that. In 2010, they awarded me as one of the 5 most innovative ideas in global health. And yeah, they paid me a lot of money, and I did a lot of research on this for a couple of years before I left MIT and started doing something else.
Doesn't that help like clear any initial self-doubt that you have?
Yes and no. I'll be honest, like I'm very afraid of failures. You ask people what they're afraid of, they'll say, spider and, monkey and this and that, right? My fear is a fear of failure. And so all this self-doubt really comes from that fear. So I have these two inner forces that are kind of working against each other. There is one part of me that is not satisfied just being very comfortable. Right? And he keeps wanting to try different things, keep trying to break away from the mold and do something very unique, right? That inherently requires getting out of your comfort zone, doing something new, right? That feeling inherently requires that you can't be afraid of failures, because if you are, you will never try something new. Whereas I have this other part of me that is really, really afraid of failures, that always says, did you think of that situation? Have you considered that situation into account? Like, what if you do this? What if you fail? What if this goes wrong? And so that's really where the self-doubt comes in whenever I try something new, is because there's a part of me that is afraid of failure, whereas there is a part of me that wants to do something different than what anybody else has done. And so I have this conflict in me. And so my center sort of takes a balanced approach and listens to both parts, and then decides based on the gut feeling which path to go forward. And more often than not, the part that wants to break the mold and do something new ends up winning. But the part that is afraid of failures is what really creates the self-doubt.
Do you think the part of that is afraid of failure comes from cultural soundtrack?
It has a deep-rooted place, and it comes from my very, very humble upbringing, right? And I've told that to the people I care about. I grew up in a household where we had, one bowl, one plate, and one spoon, right? And my dad would eat first, and then we would, because he was the oldest, and then we would wash it, and then I would eat first because I was the oldest son, and then my brother, and then we would wash it, and then that's when my mother eats. My dad did not have enough resources for to feed all of us. When he saw that I have potential, that I was really good in school and I was really good in whatever I did, he saw in me a path to salvation. He didn't even finish undergraduate, right? He didn't even finish high school. So he saw in me someone who can actually make up for all his shortcomings. And so the reason why he was very hard on me is because he didn't want me to fail. And he was very risk averse. Every time I would go out and do something that he would feel that this would affect my studies, it would worry him a lot, right? What if this kid, you know, digresses from his path? He's doing so well. I'm so afraid that if he fails, he'll be like me. And I think that fear of failure comes from that upbringing. I didn't have a safety net, right? If I fail something, that's it. That's the end of my career. I'll be, pulling a rickshaw in India, making a daily living, and that's about it. So I had that part, but I recognize it. I recognize where it comes from, but that's my struggle, right? That self-doubt, because I never really had enough to actually be sure, okay, even if I fail, I have the safety net. It's fine. If I don't get this job, I'll do something else. I'll be fine financially. So I've learned that, and I try to inculcate that with my daughter, that she doesn't feel that fear, because it really hampers your growth in many ways. A lot of the times, people in America feel so confident is because they don't know, but
How to be fearful.
how to be fearful. They had everything that they wanted ever, right? They had parents who take care of them. They had resources that if not this college, they can go to that college. If not this job, they can do something else. If not this profession, something else, right? As a society, Americans have a lot more resources. That's not really the case. People who come from different parts of the world who don't even, in the morning they wake up and don't even know whether or not they're going to eat food at night.
Were you the first person that went to college in your family?
In my immediate family, yes.
Yes. Same here. If I were in Hong Kong, I do not believe that I would have gotten college education. So I totally can relate to what you're saying. You should be I know that you are, but you should be so proud of yourself for all the things that you have accomplished. That I think the struggle for people that come from a different society is that we are so hard on ourselves.
We are.
Like the inner critics is harder than anyone that is out there.
Right. And it's amazing that we are so hard on ourselves, and anytime, you get a criticism from outside, it brings that inner critic back. There is a voice inside you that is so powerful that tells you, look, I told you so, you are not good enough. And I don't know where that comes from. Maybe that comes from our upbringing, that comes from our culture, and to be aware of it and to continuously keep in check, is hard. Is very hard.
It is very hard because there's no reason under any circumstances for you to even be so hard on yourself based on all the accomplishment, based on your journey. And a lot of people would say the same thing about me. Yet that self-worth management is what my friend Sasha Strauss said. He said, I don't like your wording, but I'm going to use your wording. It is painful but true about your self-worth management, and that you get your own value from other people's recognition of you.
Right.
So he was hoping that I will find a way, because I'm very good in terms of helping other people succeed. And I'm very hesitant in even talking about myself. At least I was. And so it's always a struggle. But I thought that this is one of the reasons why I like him so much. 4 years ago, when I took his webinar, I was not intentional about the use of my language. Most of the people would not see me as a non-confident person. And I don't think that I'm a non-confident person. But I think professionally, I'm very confident. I know what I'm doing. But the self-identity, I'm still having some struggle with the self-identity. I think that there has to be some way for us who actually are super accomplished to not be so hard on ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, people like us who didn't inherit anything and had to earn and work hard for every single thing, they develop this perspective. They have a respect for how hard it is to get anything in this world, right? And in terms of self-worth, I agree with you. I think this self-doubt and this constant struggle for self-worth is what makes a lot of us very successful, is because we are never satisfied, right? We are never satisfied.
We're masochistic.
Yeah, we are masochistic in some ways because we are not satisfied. We are always like, we could do this better because we are deriving our self-worth from all these accomplishments. But I think the one of the ways it negatively affects us is we become, sometimes if we don't keep a check on it, we become too dependent on what other people think of us. We become it's not self-esteem that we have. Someone who I admire a lot calls this esteem as other esteem. This is not a self-esteem, this is other esteem. It depends on other people's view of who you are. And those type of people are very good followers, but it's hard for them to become leaders because as part of leadership, no matter what you do, 50% of the people are going to hate you. So if you are so worried about what people think of you, it'll be hard for you to lead and make a difficult choice and be convinced that when you are taking that step, you are right. Right? That conviction comes not from other people, it comes from your own self-esteem and self-confidence and your gut instincts. And that is what I try to do whenever I'm taking a decision. I recognize that I have these parts that are in conflict with each other. And I have to consciously sit down, have them talk to me, and come to a conclusion like we have a family meeting or something. And
Meeting.
yeah, meeting. It's like and then we talk about it. All these parts are talking to each other, and then there is a center part of me, the one that kind of controls everything, and that says, no, look, we have heard everybody's perspective, all these parts, everybody's perspective, and now we have come to this conclusion that we are going to march ahead, right? And everybody says, okay, and they keep their opinions to themselves, and we sort of march ahead. And so we have to be mindful of that.
Yeah, I think that I've actually come a long way, not really quite there. So I'm kind of really appreciative when I said that, because even that in judging myself, I use a perfectionist standard. And I think that was what Arthur Brooks talked about. He teaches happiness at Harvard. The concept that he talked about is some of the people have this success addiction. You just keep chasing after. And success really, it depends on how you define success. And we're going to wrap it up soon. But I think that in the old days, I was like, okay, well, get that A when I get a B plus, just keep chasing something that it could be a little bit illusory. And then whose standard is that, right? I mean, as long as I don't bring home an F, so that's fine. And I love my parents, but I think immigrants, especially, who had to overcome so much hardship to come to the States, and given the opportunity, so you don't want to waste it. So you ended up, I have always been a workaholic. So they molded me with that workaholic nature. My parents used to own a Chinese restaurant, so I had to figure out how to compartmentalize my time. got to work at a restaurant, got to support the parents, got to get good grade, when you go to college. So I started applying for like the Center for East Asian Studies and got to know all this professor. And a lot of people really like me because I'm a super people pleaser. So if they ask me to do something, I'll just do it and I will be fast about it. I still remember this is funny that I was on a production trip. I had an attorney that never asked me about like my background, and I had worked with him for years. And one time we were doing a document production, and the client took us out to dinner. So the client was actually intrigued. What was your upbringing and anything that one of my attorneys never asked me for years. So I was like, oh yeah, my parents had a Chinese restaurant, blah, blah, blah. I did X, Y, Z, and this and that. All of a sudden, my attorney is like, oh, that's why. I'm like, that's why what? No wonder you can work like that. I said, you never asked. He was like, how come you never show? You never share that with me. I'm like, you never show any interest.
You never asked.
And I don't volunteer because that's the position, right? Never volunteer any questions that you were not asked. So, knowing what you currently know, what advice would you offer to young lawyers or people who wants to enter the STEM field or into IP space?
It's an incredibly rewarding career. I would say people who want to get into IP space, patent law, they should find comfort in this feeling that this field is ever changing. Very, very smart people work in this field. You'll be interacting with very intellectually curious and intellectually smart people. And so it's a good profession, it's a good career to have. There are two things that I think people in this field have. They like science, they like common sense, they like technology, they like innovation, but they also love the language. The love for language is what draws them to love the law. How words that are written on paper can mean so many different things in so many different contexts. And if you have that love for law, love for language, and you like smart people, then this is your profession. And people who are entering into STEM field and who want to be IP lawyer, they should, besides taking, science classes, which they always have to, they should try to take one or two classes every semester on language and linguistics and logic, just, pure logic. They should try to take classes and get experience in writing well, right? Organizing your thoughts. They should take classes in how to debate or talk about your ideas. Don't be shy of going up to stage and summarize your findings and summarize your idea in very simple way so that lay people can understand. Law is about dealing with a lot of normal people, like 12 people on the jury are not the very smartest people, but the way they decide who is right and who is wrong is by their gut instinct, who's telling the truth, who they feel is telling the truth and who is not. And so you can't tell them like very complicated concepts in very complicated way. You have to dumb it down really, really a lot to explain the basic concept. That is a very important skill that a lot of people don't have. Because all our lives, we try to learn all the complicated things. We only go to the half circle. We never really finish the full circle. And so,
how to put it in layperson terms.
Yes. And so I think people who are interested in this field should consider that aspect of professional development where they learn how to speak clearly, how to write well, how to articulate very complicated ideas into very simple concepts.
So we have talked about a lot of very transparent and very heartfelt topics. So thank you so much for your time. And I really enjoyed this discussion.
Thank you.